Any design firm can do pretty logos. Any printing company can do, good quality print. So for us, for that, that specific vertical of senior healthcare, it's, hey, we are the industry experts. We've been doing it now for 20 years. There's really not much out there that we've never seen. Mm-hmm. And so that allows us to kind of separate ourselves. That's our differentiator. That allows us to separate us from that local advertising agency or the printer down the street.
And then cobbling everything together.
Sure.
Right.
Welcome to The Roll Call, the podcast where we dive into the roles that define us. I'm your host, John Glahn. On each episode, we explore the journeys of people discovering their true roles in life, business, and beyond. Get ready for inspiring conversations about finding purpose and authenticity. Let's roll the roll call.
Welcome, everyone, to the Roll Call podcast. I'm John Glahn. I have with me Will Porter, good friend, local friend, the owner and founder of Porter One Design. And I'll let him explain exactly what that means. He is a creative extraordinaire from many different things we're going to get into, whether he knows that I'm going to get into them or not, but we're going to get into them. Fun guy, known him. Our kids went to the same school, and just, again, a great human. And I've long wanted you to be on the podcast, so excited to have you on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah, excited to be here.
We're all accounted for here, so let's start the roll call. All right. So this is about entrepreneurship. It's about the roles that we play. So I can't get started without everyone knowing what you do and how you got here to be the entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I started my company almost 20 years ago. Next June, it'll be 20 years. It's a full service creative firm specific to senior living and senior healthcare. Yeah. So I had, right out of school, I'd moved to Atlanta and gotten a job as a marketing assistant for a senior healthcare company, one of the larger senior healthcare management companies in the country. And so didn't know anything about senior healthcare at all. Really, I had never taken a marketing class. I actually went to school and studied English and music, wanted to be a musician, and
see, I told you that's what we're going to come back to.
Okay, realized early on that was not my calling, but so had worked for them for about 4 or 5 years, learned quite a bit about marketing specifically for senior healthcare and senior living. So that's going to fall under everything from independent living, from assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, post-acute care, rehabilitation, hospice, home health, really any type of living or healthcare situation for seniors. And so when I moved back to Michigan about 5 years later, I had interviewed with a number of different firms and decided, I'm like, if I was ever going to start my own company, why not just do that now? Yeah. So started in my basement with just a handful of clients that I had made, via connections in that industry. And again, that was 20 years ago. So what we do is full service creative services for that industry. So we do a full range of brand, logo design and development. We do traditional graphic design,
Sure.
A lot of content and content development. We do a full range of digital services, so website design, development, digital advertising, and traditional. So we have actually a warehouse that we do all of our printing. This is one of the industries, that still uses paper. People like to hold things in their hand, get that brochure, get that flyer, get that newsletter. Yeah. And so we have a warehouse where we print everything in-house and do fulfillment.
So, what's interesting and hearing, again, how many people, you may even know this number, how many companies do print and media and, Sure. marketing, right? I wouldn't want to say a dime a dozen, but there's a lot of them out there in general.
Sure.
But the fact that you niched down from the start, right? When you started the company, you were already in this niche business, right? The coin phrase is the riches are in the niches, right? And not many people start that way.
Right.
And, was it just because you came from that industry and so you knew it?
It was, and that's really the only industry I knew how to market around, and really knew the ins and outs of it. And we use that as a selling point now. So, there, like you said, there's some, but there's not a lot of companies in the country that do exactly what we do for exactly the niche that we do.
Yeah.
And, for us to be able to go in, a lot of times our competition is going to be something along the, hey, this is a local printer that we use that prints everything for anyone, or we found an online printer, or we're using a designer website agency, a creative agency, and that they service healthcare, but they also do a ton of other healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it's something that, this is the only industry that we service. So we know what you should be doing with your marketing,
right.
and we know what your competition is doing with its marketing. And, we can really bring a lot to the table as far as recommendations, especially for healthcare management companies that maybe are startups or don't have an extensive marketing program to begin with. For example, if we're looking at the different services that they provide, we can say, hey, you're the only this building is the only one in the area, the only facility in the area that provides CHF therapy. Mm-hmm. And so, if you go to another design agency and say, hey, we want to create a CHF flyer, they'll say, okay, fantastic, we'd love to do that. What does CHF stand for? Whereas we can show you all of the different CHF or cardiac rehab, or all the different types of marketing collateral that we've developed both traditionally and digitally for clients, and what we've had success with. Here are the case studies related to this very, very specific type of therapy for seniors.
Yeah, I mean, that's what for the listeners, right? For those starting a business, it's most people are scared to niche down because everyone thinks they have to chase revenue, or it's easy. Like I can just sit here in Michigan and try marketing to so many different people, because there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other options for businesses. That's one way to go. Or I can be very laser focused, and I don't have to put any extra effort into what's my message. Who am I trying to the old ways of looking up who's the target market. Well, it's pretty damn specific.
Sure.
So it simplifies your business model. And I think it's just a great learning for companies starting, and or because I do have another client who's actually doing this in the other way, is now niching their business down.
Yeah.
So turning away revenue, mindfully turning away revenue,
sure,
but also turning away inefficient work, and really to make a more laser focused and probably make more money just in the short term model.
Sure.
And then therefore it's translatable for some other value, someone else might, because again, you can also do that same thing, but with another division. You can still laser focus in another market.
Sure, absolutely.
But makes it easier to do that.
It is, and growth opportunities do lie in other niches. And you don't have to have this is the only specific thing that we do. If we can do this very specifically for this industry, and then found another vertical that this is our second thing, and third, those are great growth opportunities. We've tried some of that throughout the years and have had up and down success with it. But at the beginning, as a startup, it's hard to turn away any business. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so at the beginning, I was doing websites for a family member's restaurant, and you're printing flyers for my landscaper's lawn mowing business. You know what I mean? And so it's hard, but those are the types of things where you're never really going to experience real growth. You know what I mean? So, to go for this specific industry, for what we specifically do, to go after clients where they're going to have a spend, a monthly marketing revenue or a budget that's going to allow us to grow as well, then those were really our targets from the beginning. It did help that this was the only industry I really knew how to market. You know what I mean? And so if it was other types of healthcare, so hospital chains, or it was pediatric health, or it was, all of the thousands of different other types of healthcare, I don't really know much about that. And I think that you can be the most talented graphic designer, you can have the best pricing and quality for print, but when you don't really know the industry, it's hard for you to strategize and to partner with your clients in order to do that. Any design firm can do pretty logos. Any printing company can do, good quality print.
Yeah.
So for us, for that, that specific vertical of senior healthcare, it's, hey, we are the industry experts. We've been doing it now for 20 years. There's really not much out there that we've never seen. And so that allows us to kind of separate ourselves. That's our differentiator. That
Right.
allows us to separate us from that local advertising agency or the printer down the street.
And then cobbling everything together. Right. I have to imagine, because this is not something that I have in my DNA. It has to take some discipline to stay in that. And what I say by that mean is many of us have the shiny object syndrome, where it's like, ooh, I want to grow. Let's go try that.
Sure.
Tell me, I mean, is it the temptations along the way, or is it just a...
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not every big client that we've ever at least talked to hasn't always been in senior healthcare. I had a meeting once really early on that I got through a friend of a friend with the vice president of marketing for, it wasn't the big three, but it was a supplier of the big three. You would know the name. Yep. If I said it to you, and was at the, in a high rise office in the Ren Center somewhere in downtown Detroit, meeting with his vice president of marketing, who agreed to take this meeting in. And I don't know anything about automotive. You know, I mean, I can change the oil in my car, and that is about the extent.
That's
of what,
impressive.
Thank you. Yeah. That's about the extent of what I can do in a vehicle. But so I just didn't know anything about it. So he basically wanted me to come in and pitch. And so, I spent a week beforehand, doing up, the Mad Men style, and I walked in with all this energy and blah, 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 and they were very polite about it. And they were very, that's really interesting. I think you've got some good ideas. We'll be in touch. And I never got a call back, and so
thankfully, actually, probably.
And right, exactly. And so it would have been a pretty wild account, but it was something, I mean, that was like year 2 of a startup, what I mean? I think I was still in my basement at that point.
Yeah.
And so, those are the types of things that it's really good. I wouldn't call that a failure or I didn't get the business, but that was a great learning lesson in that you should stick with what you know. You know what I mean? To present yourself as, I'm the expert in this. This is what you should be doing, which is really what clients want. From a marketing standpoint, they know their company better than I'll ever know, or anyone from my team will ever know. But what we do know is how to market this industry, and what other clients of ours have had success and failures with over the last several decades. And so for me to go in an industry that I have no idea how to do that, like automotive, they were very polite, but don't call us, we'll call you.
Yeah, you know what? I kind of want to go down a path. The Detroiters, did you ever watch that show?
I have, yeah. One of the guys from Saturday Night Live.
Okay. So anyway, takes me down that kind of a path of what that could have looked like back in the day. Talk to me about the journey from, basement / garage to here, right? When did you, because when it takes stone. So you were in your 20s when you made that decision to do that.
Yep.
Again, I waited later in life to make my entrepreneurial check-in. So you're in your 20s, and I recall, right, this is family. You're starting, and you're trying this journey. And so the hiccups along the way, like how long did you, was it like a year you were still cranking out in the basement, or was it just like 5 years? I'm just, I love envisioning that hustle.
Sure. There were a lot of hiccups along the way, and again, I didn't come from a business background. I've never had a business class in my life, even in college, any type of advertising, marketing. I learned it all, through trial and error. And I don't necessarily recommend that because there's a lot of error, in those trials. So one of the things that I realized early on, and I don't want to say struggle with it, but I still wrestle with it, to this day, is when to delegate. When it's just you, when you're the only employee of your company in a startup, it's hard to trust an employer, a contractor, sometimes a vendor, in doing the things that you've been doing and you feel like you're doing well, you've had some success with. And by the way, I need to take myself out of that process. That's been sometimes difficult for me, and sometimes still is difficult for me. But I got to a point where this was probably maybe 3 years in, and had really started experiencing some growth. I had turned my basement into basically a Kinko's at that point. And so you're talking pool table size printers going down the stairs into a basement, a partially finished basement at the time. And that's not a good long-term strategy, for that. And so setting an alarm for 3:00 in the morning to go down to the basement, make sure nothing jammed, that's always, that's a fun, night's sleep. So, but got to a point where it was just too much. I was just so burnt out that I was working. I mean, again, with any startup, you're going to work way more than you thought you would. Yeah. But I was working every weekend. I was working every night. I was not, there's a point where it's just not healthy mentally, physically, and everything else. And so I got to a point where I cannot do this, but I'm also not going to turn away the business. And so at that point, hired employee and got an office. I actually have a real quick funny story before that. So right before I was supposed to do that, I was about to sign a contract with my largest client at the time, and we were going to provide like a monthly newsletter for all of their buildings, and it was close to 100 buildings. And this was going to be something that once we had that contract signed, I would have finally have the financial wherewithal to lease the office and get the new printers. And I mean, these are, some of these printers are $200,000, $300,000, $500,000. And so you're leasing them, but still, for a startup budget, it's a lot of money. And hire an employee to run them and to create this content for them and do all of that. So we're literally, hours away from signing this contract. And I was going to sign the contract and then within the same probably 30 seconds, sign the lease because I had a place all picked out. It was very cost effective. It was not my first choice for leasing an office, but at the same time, I was like, I need something fast, I need something cheap. And I got a call from the head of marketing for this client saying, I am so sorry this came up from the top, but we're going to have another person print. We still want you to create them, but we're gonna print. And I was devastated. I'd been working on this account and this thing for months and months and months. Yeah. And then I had to call or probably email what was to be my new landlord and hey, my big contract fell through and I can't do this with you. Yeah. And so and that was such a bummer and it was such a step back for me. And what it turned out to be was a real blessing in disguise because I ended up getting that print contract like somewhere in the next 6 to 12 months when they realized like this is we made an error and we want to work with you, which was fantastic, and found a much better office for the same price, something that we could grow into, something I could have, employees, start to grow. And we weren't immediately on day one. So like we're completely, every square foot is accounted for. So it really worked out to be a blessing, something I was really thankful for that I didn't get the business when I did, because when we got it, 9 to 12 months later, I was much more prepared to grow the company quickly like that. And so that was something that ended up working out.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that things happening for a reason.
Sure.
That means God's work, right? Trying
Amen.
we're put in a position to succeed or find a reason why it didn't happen, right? I think that's mostly where it is. Thanks for pivoting to that. That's great.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the learnings that I have through myself or with my clients, or again, things that so many parts of life, like just rushing into something, has turned out great for me in some way. Right? Some of my just dumb luck of just like moving forward into something. Sure. But most times when there's a second look, right? There's like, okay, wait a minute. There's a reason to pause here.
Yep.
Let's take that reason.
Yeah. I know. I completely agree. I think everything happens for a reason, and it's great when those reasons turn out to be immediately good or short-term good. It's like, hey, I didn't want to spend the money for this conference, but I ended up going and we just got an enormous new client out of it. And oh my gosh, everything happens for a reason. On the flip side, you get a phone call one day or an email from one of your longtime clients and it's like, hey, we've made the decision to transition out of senior healthcare and we're selling a bunch of the buildings that we've had clients go bankrupt. We've had, clients that for whatever reason that have just chosen not to work with us. Thankfully, most of the time that hasn't happened. But it's a lot harder to find everything happens for a reason for those.
Yeah.
But everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. Because in the moment, right? I mean, that's the boy, if I have this conversation once a week, I'd be, and get paid a nickel, I'd be a millionaire. Of the part of ownership that people don't see or realize is that you feel all of those things, right? Your employees might get bummed.
Yeah.
But you feel the impact of those big things. And again, you have to find the good at some point, but that man sitting in it in the moment, how many things flash before your eyes of like, okay, like in an instant now, like you've been there and you've done that. So now you can almost in an instant be like, okay, that just happened. What do I have to unwind? Or what do I have to, like it's just, you can just see all of that.
No, it's brutal. Yeah. And it's still brutal. 20 years later, something bad happens because, business never grows like this. It's always that peaks and valleys, and the peaks are great and the valleys suck. But it's trying to manage that, and not getting too emotional about the ups or the downs is really hard. But yeah, it's those gut punches can be brutal, especially in the early years. I had a buddy who, a fraternity brother of mine in college, that started a company a couple years before I did. And he's still doing it to this day. He's had a lot of success with it. But he was kind of my business mentor, for those early years. Yeah. And, he's like, once you make it through the crying yourself to sleep every night phase, you are golden. So, and there's a lot of truth to, you work for this thing that's your baby. It's one of your children, and you're spending 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day or more, investing every penny and all the blood, sweat, and tears into this thing to try to get it off the ground in those early years. And after all that, after all the stresses of that, then you lay down in bed at night and it's super late because you've been working so hard, and you close your eyes and try not to think about that. And it's difficult, you know what I mean? And it still can be difficult.
Yeah. And, then wake up at 2 a.m. and then it's just...
Right. Did I send that email? I don't know if I sent that email, and so, yeah, those are never fun. So, especially in those early years.
So there's never probably an easy transition for this next step, but I really want to have it in here.
Yeah.
Partially because of the name convention of what we're going to talk about, but also the other part of you, Will, that is cool as hell, that I was in a rock band in high school, and it was called Dead Space. And then it was called Flipside. And then it was literally my good friends were like, hey, dude, I play guitar. His cousin bought a drum set. You should go get a bass. I'm like, okay. And back in the day, it was open up a newspaper, go to the classifieds, whatever.
Sure. Found
this bass, go pick it up, right? So all I did was just mimic him, and it was awesome. I felt awesome as a 16-year-old going into bars and playing. I was like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
You're a real life rock star.
I'm not, but thanks for saying that. Yeah, not at all, actually, but yeah, thank you.
Yes, you are. You can shred, man. What's the name of the band?
We've had so many names over the years of our. Some are, more appropriate to mention on a podcast than others. But
okay.
There's been a lot of different names.
But what I think it's just really cool. One is, right, it takes, I think, very translatable to work in business, right? It takes to be you're the lead guitar, right? So to play guitar, it takes practice and again, talent and all those kinds of things.
Sure.
That's translatable. And I know you guys, I think it was in college where you started the band, right?
Actually, it was playing in high school. I started bands, but the in college was a group of buddies. So I'm from northern Michigan originally, and did summers on Mackinac Island. And so some buddies from that and myself, again, a million years ago, started playing and started playing out in some of the bars. Not that we were ever very good, but we had so many friends on Mackinac that would come watch us play and drive up those bar tabs that all of the owners of the bars on Mackinac were like, you guys can play anytime because that is the best night we've done in a long time. So, and that kind of evolved into continuing to, to do that once in a great moon. So.
I love it. I think, cause actually I just a a share, right? So
Sure.
one is not you guys. You're a fun band, but you also have themes because you get together from all over the country and you
Right.
come together every once in a while,
Sure.
each year to go play a gig somewhere,
Yeah.
or a number of them, right?
Mhm.
And I recall this was August, I think, in COVID.
Okay.
Was one local place that like it was just crazy because everything was closed down pretty much here. I think I'm pretty sure it was August because I think all of our friends, you were playing at this location.
Okay.
And I remember we were all like crazy. We're all going, we all went and we packed it. It was probably similar like you, but we packed it.
Yeah.
We all had a ball because none of us had been out to do anything like that in forever.
Sure.
We're hugging on each other. We're dancing. We're doing all this stuff. And then I remember, I think it was the first and only gig that they had, I think, for like months after that.
After that, they shut it down. Well, and I think that, and again, that was early in COVID. I mean, that was a few months that was the summer of 2000. And so nobody really knew what was, going to happen at that point. So I think certainly things like restaurants and bars had to be overly cautious, about different things. And so I think that there was some mention of like, we really want to try to keep people kind of spaced out, and everybody in the band's like, that's a great idea. And, we just showed up and, there's 200 people on a dance floor and everybody's going bonkers because like you said, there wasn't any of that. Everything had been shut down. Going out to a restaurant, going out to a bar in a lot of places, just wasn't a possibility. Yeah. And all of a sudden, you've got these 5 yahoos, on stage, trying to sing Journey songs, and it was fun. I do remember that particular show, and that was a really fun one because we didn't know if we were going to play. We didn't know what was going to happen, that year, and we ended up playing that. And I think one other gig that entire year in Grand Rapids, and that was it. And so, but it was a fun night. Yeah.
So funky again, because it's all around whatever the hell role we're talking. I love that. Again, most of us identify with the business that we're in, or we've been running for 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So showing some other signs of that, right?
Sure.
You also have some other, your other parts of life, right? You've got some older sons. You've got one that ventured out for college. I mean, how's that?
Sure. Yeah, it's wild because everyone's like, it's such a change when they leave for college. And you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then they leave for college and it's such a change, So my oldest son is a freshman at Marquette University in Milwaukee. He loves it. Milwaukee's a fun town. Like it's a super cool town. The campus is right in the heart of downtown Milwaukee. So it's not like a college town setting. It's a downtown setting and it's great. And he loves it. He loves the college. Liam, well, both of my boys, but especially my oldest, Liam, is always loves to get out and do new things, and he's never the kid to just sit in his room. So he's already, a captain of an indoor baseball team, and he's already, doing a bunch of different clubs, and it's doing some sports there and everything. So he's really enjoyed, his experience there. And my youngest is very creative as well, and has a couple of interesting Instagram channels.
Yeah, he cooks, right?
He has his own cooking channel.
That's awesome.
Evan Cooks on Instagram, and then got drafted to play Major League Wiffle Ball this year, which is an actual thing that I didn't know was a thing, but there's professional wiffle ball leagues, and he got drafted to do that, so he's been doing a lot of that this year, which is fun.
I know, and that's again, I don't necessarily always bring in personal things to this, but that's just another piece of, again, our kids went to the same, K through 8.
Yep.
And then went to different high schools. Sure. And I love the experience. I love the non-traditional way that goes. I mean, I think that's translatable from a parenting standpoint, and the role you've allowed for that to play, right? Because it is just so cool because he's just taking off on these own things that are not traditional. I think it's just so cool.
It is, and and again, we're to get off on a little bit of a tangent. To have the things that your children enjoy doing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be sports, but like the clubs or the different types of, for some kids, it's robotics, or it's Boy Scouts, or it's, all of the different things that, that our kids participated in. You coached my son in football. I coached your son in baseball.
Yeah.
And so, so for us, it was a lot of sports, but, having those things, most kids aren't going to be professional baseball or football players. And so to find their thing could be cross country. It could be a lot of different other types of things that they're really, really good at. And if they're enjoying it, I think that that's so important.
Well, and I think, there's an aspect of where parenting comes into that, right? To allow for that space and, and to celebrate it, right? I mean, that's to have the courage. I mean, I think there's just, to have the courage to step up and do those kinds of, like, again, have your own channel doing. He's been doing that for a couple of years, right? The Evan Cooks thing.
Mm-hmm.
The future is bright for a kid that has that gusto to go do that, right? I'm envisioning what his entrepreneurial journey is going to be like, because you can see he's willing to take that risk on himself.
Yeah, and especially the creative aspects of it too. So, he does know how to cook, and it's great. Like, I get to come home from, work, and it's like, hey, Dad, I'm thinking about making, a carbonara or maybe a beef Wellington this evening, both of which he does have videos on doing. And so I'm like, fantastic. I would love for you to do that, and I'll clean up, and great. But I think for him, even maybe more so than that, was the digital marketing aspects of it. So filming the videos and editing the videos down, and how are those marketed, and am I going to get clips from them, when I'm posting those out on social media. I think that those are not only cool creative outlets for somebody to be working on, but those are all real world life skills. Yeah, they absolutely translate. For what we do for digital marketing, there's a lot of overlap there. And so to get those and to know that you enjoy doing something like that, I think can be really important.
Yeah. No, that's great. And that's where I think the pulling it forward, I love seeing the future. The entrepreneurship, small businesses are what make this world go round. And I don't know why I just went down that path. But no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing I do love to do to wrap up the show is really to talk about a mistake, a failure, something, and again, this goes different ways. It could be personal, professional, whatever it might be. Something that you reflect on and like that someone else could learn from.
Sure. So I don't know. I've had a lot of situations like I described earlier where, we were planning on something, and something that we really hoped would happen didn't happen. And it was a step backwards, a short-term step backwards, related to growth. So we certainly experienced those. I don't know if I've had like, hey, here's a story of a big failure that, I learned from it, and here's some great advice to take from that. But one of the things, I'll go back to something I had said earlier. One of the things that I think, as small business, especially in the start phases, you fail all the time. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to keep getting back up. And the goal is to not make the same mistakes and to fail at the same things over and over. And so that's what I've really tried to do. One of the things that, again, I was a mistake of mine quite a bit, and still can be sometimes, is how do I effectively delegate? Mm-hmm. When should I delegate? What are things that I should hold on to, and what could that possibly look like? And it's still, 20 years in, I'm still sometimes wrestling with that. And that can be something as large as, do I need to hire more employees and just, take this off my plate completely, as opposed to, is this something that I've always handled, I feel like I do really well, but could I at least get some coaching on, or could I get some, additional educational materials on, or some training on, so constantly learning, constantly growing, because business is constantly changing. That's important. But I feel like when you don't effectively delegate, you set yourself up to be a bottleneck. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, Will always handles this for our company. Well, Will's on vacation, what I mean? And so even, like a lot of business owners, when I go on vacation, I'm still checking email the entire time. So, but if this is something that Will's out at a conference and he can't do this for us, we need to have a backup plan, and that's unsustainable.
Yeah.
So being able to delegate allows, I think, business owners to focus on what they should be. You hear that phrase, work on your company, not work in your company.
Yep.
It's harder than it seems. It really is, especially if you have been doing those roles. If I'm hiring a new digital advertising person, I've never really done digital advertising. That's super easy to delegate because I don't know how to do it.
Right.
But the things that I've been doing, from a sales standpoint, from a business development standpoint, from a account management standpoint, my longtime clients, it's really tough to say, oh, and here's so-and-so, and they are our head of sales, or they're our, senior account manager, and they're going to be working with you on a lot of the day-to-day stuff. That's difficult for me, but at the same time, for a big client, I shouldn't be responding to, hundreds of email orders a week just because, that's all I'm doing.
Right. And I think that many of us do beat ourselves up for that. Again, that's the same thing. Because what got us here is our hustle and our work, and and we do know the answer. Most people come to us because we have the answer. If we don't, we're pretty quick to make the decision after all these years of experience. Right. So we kind of just breed it ourselves. We just breed this to keep happening. And I just recently had someone on where, it was that realization mutually that it's not inherent in many people to delegate. And I'd argue it's not really. You can learn to, and there are tools to help you do that.
Sure.
So, that's we can put tools in place to help not just you, because I think the people around you need to see it and know it too.
Sure.
Versus just like, hey, go take this. It's like, you'll find going through the right kind of exercise with your people is they'll start pulling it off your plate for you.
Sure.
Right? Because most of the time we're figuring out like, how do I get this off my plate? And we put it back on us again. Sure. Right.
And it sets a good example for them too, because they, especially senior management, they need to delegate too.
Oh, yeah.
And if they've been so caught up in the minutia that their teams can handle, then they're falling into the same trap that I'm falling into.
Yeah.
And so setting that example for them and giving them the appropriate processes and the strategy on how we should do this and when it's not always appropriate to delegate everything, so but helping them with that and guiding them towards that and setting a good example for them is important.
Your employees are lucky because you already get that part. So many folks that I talk to, even in my circle, not just my clients, but that I talk to, right? Most of us business owners, we're so focused on getting this shit off our plate, right? So we're like, hey, if I can get that off, that's great.
Sure.
And they forget that, wait, we can also do this for the rest of our people. And by the way, we raise them up to even better. Or so many things that we work on, like, well, I want the leadership team to work on this because they'll be better. But what about the rest of the people?
Sure.
So
anyway, it's I've got an amazing leadership team right now. Like my leadership team is awesome, top to bottom. And, again, setting that good example and inspiring and empowering them to want to continue to grow with the company, is always really important.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's plenty of opportunity to do so. So, one, and wrap up, congratulations on 20 years upcoming.
Thank you.
In the business. That's incredible. Congratulations on being disciplined and staying in your lane, and going through the ups and downs. So, again, thanks for joining. I had a ball.
Yeah, I did as well. Thanks for having me.
All right. Good stuff.
Cool.
That's a wrap.
Thanks for tuning in to The Roll Call with John Glahn. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe for more insightful conversations. Remember, discovering your true role in life is a journey worth exploring each and every day. Until next time, keep defining your path and living your authentic self. This is John Glahn signing off.